The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we're going to have some really important information for you from Eric Parsons, who's the Outreach and Education Coordinator at the Friendship Center. We're going to be talking about healthy relationship. What does that look like? And what does it look like sometimes when relationships are not so healthy? And where can you go to get some really important resources in the Helena community? So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons because you're not going to want to miss this.
Montana Veterans, your independence matters. The freedom to age with dignity, how and where you want for as long as possible. Please help us improve long-term veteran care in Montana by taking a short online survey. Go to veteransurvey.mt.gov. Your long-term independence is our priority. Go to veteransurvey.mt.gov and help us get it right, Montana. This message brought to you by DPHHS, the Montana Veteran Affairs Division, and this station.
Can you say ombudsman?
Ombudsman. Benson?
Uma Doodlesman? Fortunately, you don't have to say it right to get the help of a long-term care ombudsman. If you or a loved one reside in assisted living or long-term care, an ombudsman can help resolve any issue. And these services are completely free and confidential. Now, why don't you try that again?
Ombudsman.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Katie Lovell. Today we're speaking with Eric Parsons, who's the Outreach and Education Coordinator for the Friendship Center, and we're going to be talking a little bit about healthy relationships. Eric, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I adore the Friendship Center. I think you guys do such amazing work, but tell our audience a little bit about what the Friendship Center is.
Yeah, thank you. The Friendship Center is an advocacy center and a resource in general for anybody who's been impacted in any way by domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. But really, we try to position ourselves as a resource for anybody who has questions or struggles of some sort with a relationship in their life.
And where in Montana is the Friendship Center located?
So we're located in Helena.
Sure.
We're at 1430 North Sanders Street, but we serve the entire Tri-County area. So Lewis and Clark, Broadwater, and Jefferson counties. Folks from all of those areas can always give us a call or come see us if they have a concern in their life, or if they maybe are concerned for a loved one. And we can either provide guidance, walk them through some safety planning, maybe emotional support is what they're looking for. We can work with them on how to get in touch with law enforcement, maybe how to get some protection through the court system.
Sure.
Or if maybe we're not the right resource for them, we can point them in the direction of somebody who could better serve them.
Wonderful. And the Friendship Center has been part of the Helena community for quite a few years.
Yeah, the Friendship Center opened in 1971.
Wow.
And initially we were more of a homeless center for families.
Sure.
But over the course of time, as we recognized a more specific need for serving women and kids who had experienced some type of family violence, that's what we started to specialize in. What we recognize now is that all people can be victims of domestic or sexual violence or
Sure.
stalking. So it's really important for us that everybody knows that we serve people of all genders, all ages, all backgrounds. Anybody who's got some sort of concern for themselves or a loved one can come to us and get the help that they might need.
That's wonderful. And you guys do so much important education and outreach. What are some of the ways that the Friendship Center is working within the Helena community on education?
Sure. So it's really my job at the Friendship Center to try to spread our message into the community. So I spend quite a bit of time at high schools in the Tri-County area educating young folks about what healthy relationships are. I spend a fair amount of time at Carroll College working with different majors and study groups and resident advisors, peer ministers, folks like that, to help them understand how to recognize dating violence or sexual violence and what to do with that. I also spend a fair amount of time with community groups who just want to learn more about the issues, and I also do some training of professionals and volunteers who might actually be working with victims and survivors in some capacity.
Sure. And Eric, I think this is one of the topics that we think we all, know generally what it means, but when we talk about family violence or dating violence, what do those words mean?
Right. So when we hear the word domestic violence,
Yeah.
what that means is a pattern of coercive or controlling behavior. Most people think that domestic violence is physical in nature, and it certainly can be. But the reality is that any type of controlling behavior from one person directed towards another in a partner situation
Sure.
is considered to be domestic or dating violence. So that could be physical in nature, it could be emotional, it could be sexual, financial, and then there's also stalking, which is often misconceived.
Yeah.
Stalking is done typically by people that know their victim, and the victim knows the person who's committing the stalking. And that's often done in a partnership or maybe an acquaintance type of relationship to cause fear.
I think, when people hear the word stalking, or at least when I do, we always picture that, someone stalking a celebrity, but it really happens in many more relationships than that.
Absolutely. Stranger stalking, that celebrity situation, does occur,
Sure.
but more frequently than not, it is a current or former intimate partner who is stalking their partner for the purpose of causing that person to feel fear. And it's actually a really dangerous situation that
Sure.
we as advocates take very seriously, because the person who's being stalked is in actual danger of severe harm or even death in some situations.
Absolutely. Eric, is this something that, that only young kids need to worry about, or only people in their middle ages? When does domestic violence and dating violence, when does this happen in our lives?
Domestic and dating violence happens throughout the lifespan.
Sure.
We do a lot of work with young folks because they maybe haven't developed healthy mechanisms for relationships yet,
Sure.
but really people of all ages and backgrounds come to the Friendship Center for services. So we know that it's not just one group of people or one type of people that are being caused harm by domestic or dating violence. It really can be anyone.
And are there income guidelines for your services? Are there who can reach out to the Friendship Center for help?
Thank you for asking that question. The Friendship Center is entirely free to everyone, and all of our services are 100% confidential. We are bound by advocate privilege, which tells us that if we break privilege with a client, if we release any information without their written consent, we will be held accountable by law.
Sure.
The caveat to that is that we're mandated reporters for child abuse and neglect, but we tell everybody that up front so that
Yeah.
they can control what they share with us and what they don't share with us.
Sure.
The important thing to remember is that all of our services are always free and always confidential.
And that is so important. I think, a lot of people put that barrier in front of your services and say, I don't think I'd qualify, but the Friendship Center is really there for everyone.
Absolutely. Yep, we get federal grant funding and state money and private donor money so that we can fund our operation without having to charge clients, because nobody should be charged for having experienced something that's really scary or concerning.
Absolutely. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the signs in healthy relationships. This is something that kids are learning in school, but it may not be something that you're as familiar with. So make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to cover all of those signs of healthy relationships.
Perhaps our regular viewers have noticed that we've been missing a host for the last several months. In July, our favorite person, Kimmy Everman, unexpectedly passed away, and we'd like to take a few moments now to share some memories that we have of her.
For many of us, watching Aging Horizons with Kimmy as the host was like talking to a friend, and for Kimmy, that's exactly what it was. She cared about all of the viewers of Montana on Aging Horizons as if they were her personal friends. She wanted each of us to live the best possible life and connect to as many services as possible. She had no greater joy in life than connecting advocates to others that could help Montanans across the state with problems that they maybe didn't know as much about. Losing Kimmy was a great loss to the state of Montana, but the work that she did will live on in the hearts and minds and Rolodexes of so many of us at the state.
So working with Kimmy was always a very fun experience for me. She lit up a room with her smile, and I loved her giggle. She had this giggle that was the cutest, most happiest spreading of joy that I could describe. She also was very passionate about her work, about helping veterans, and about her dog Sophie.
Kimmy's been my friend, my coworker, and my mentor for over 20 years. She has taught me so much about not only Medicare, but working with people. She had a great sense of compassion and love, especially for veterans, animals, and the underdog. She loved working with seniors and people with disabilities. That was her heart. She will be greatly missed.
Aging Horizons has been on the air for over 30 years, and I've had the pleasure of working with these wonderful ladies and everybody in senior long-term care that length of time, including Kimmy Everman. And whenever we got done with the show, I just loved her laughter, which everybody's commented here. It was like we're getting away with something. Isn't this fun? And I will sincerely miss both that and her.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Eric Parsons, who is the Outreach and Education Coordinator for the Friendship Center. And right now we're going to talk a little bit about healthy relationships. So Eric, you and I were talking recently about how we didn't learn a lot of this information in school and how important it is to really talk about what a healthy relationship is. So let's talk about what are some of the great signs in a relationship? What are healthy signs that we're looking for?
Sure. When I work with young folks, I really talk about 4 specific things that build a healthy relationship. And those things are trust, respect, safety, and boundaries. If we have all of those things present in a relationship, we can build equality, meaning that 2 people in a partnership can make decisions together about what feels good and what doesn't.
Sure.
The key thing to understand about domestic violence and dating violence is that it's not about anger or lack of control over emotions. It's really about one person feeling a desire to have power over their partner.
Sure.
And so if we're building equality in a relationship, we're going to have a healthy relationship.
Wonderful. And I think this is one of those things that we think about only at the very beginning of our lives as we're first starting to date, but really building healthy relationships is something that takes work throughout the extent of the relationship, right?
Absolutely. For most of our history, we haven't had formal conversations with young folks about healthy relationships because we've all tried to figure it out on our own and we expect them to do the same. But the reality is that relationships are tough to figure out. They're complex interactions between human beings, and we tend to do the things that we've seen done in our lives.
Yeah.
So if our parents aren't good communicators or have issues, we tend to display those same behaviors. Or if we grow up in foster care with our grandparents and there's stuff going on in the home, we haven't learned good relationship behaviors.
Sure.
So it's important to have these conversations, and also it's important to keep working on these things as we grow, and every relationship is different. So we have to figure out these building blocks for each relationship.
Wonderful. And I think one of the things that we see a lot when we work with seniors is sometimes something has happened and now the relationship has started to change, and maybe that is a diagnosis of a dementia or a long-term illness, and that can really affect those relationship dynamics. What do people do in that sort of situation?
Absolutely. It's a bit of a different story with older folks because there are big life changes going on.
Yeah.
A lot of older folks are suffering from some sort of cognitive decline or mobility issues, or they're more reliant on medications or doctor's visits, things like that.
Sure.
And the thing with relationship violence or abuse is that anytime a person has the ability to manipulate or control another person, there's the potential for some type of abuse or neglect.
Sure.
So it looks different for seniors, where the types of emotional abuse or physical neglect or lack of access to resources can look different, but still serves the same purpose for the abuser, which is to control that older adult.
Sure, absolutely. And I think, one of the things we see too is that the amount of people that you have to rely on as you age can sometimes increase. Maybe you have more in-home caregivers, maybe your children are serving in a different role now as you age, and those relationships can turn negative. And so if someone is feeling that sort of pressure in a relationship, how can the Friendship Center help guide them or give them resources or support?
Sure. So just real quickly, one of the really important things to recognize about relationship abuse is that isolation is a key tool that offenders will use to control their victim. And isolation as a person ages, it gets a lot easier to accomplish because they lose touch with friends, or family members move away, or they are more dependent on caregivers. So that happens quite naturally.
Sure.
The Friendship Center exists to serve anybody in any type of relationship who's struggling with some type of abuse or neglect or a concern about their safety or well-being. So folks can always call the Friendship Center, and if it's a partner situation or a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, anything like that, we can help to do some safety planning, provide emotional support, talk to them about specifically what their concern is and how we can offer help. If the offender is more of a caregiver or maybe an adult child or something like that, there might be other organizations such as Adult Protective Services or the local area on aging that we might bring in to specialize a little bit more with that client.
You guys are such a great partner organization for so many of us that do work specifically with seniors, such a great resource to be able to, one of the legs of the stool, so helpful. One of the things I love thinking about is, just really having those conversations about healthy relationships through all parts of our life. So this is conversations that, grandparents could be having with grandkids. Are there resources on your websites, anything like that people can use for those conversations?
Yes, we've recently done a lot of work to our website to include more educational resources. Yeah. So the website will be put on the screen, and I encourage folks to visit the website and check out the resources there. There's a ton of stuff that you can read through and learn about all these different types of crimes, as well as how to build healthy relationships.
What a wonderful way to, really build those long intergenerational relationships, is having these kind of hard conversations. Mm-hmm. So, all right, when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the red flags. So when we get back to Aging Horizons, we're going to talk about some of the things that you should be looking for in maybe your relationships or in the relationships of your family or friends or neighbors that might indicate a red flag, and maybe where we can look for resources and how to support our friends and neighbors in these challenging situations. So make sure you're staying tuned to Aging Horizons, because we've got lots more for you.
You've probably seen some big-name celebrities on your TV lately talking about all the Medicare benefits you're missing out on. But the insurance companies who are paying for these ads may be pushing benefits not available in Montana. Fortunately, help is available from a friendly state health insurance assistance program counselor who can help you sort it all out. It's free, and we screen everyone for eligibility regardless of your zip code. It's Montanans helping Montanans. Call today.
Respite care is amazing. If you are capable of doing it, the rewards are beyond measure.
Stephanie Young, respite care provider, on the unexpected benefits of helping people in need.
Being a respite care provider is an amazing experience. It's something that what you give, you get back 100-fold. You receive so much more than you could ever imagine.
To find out how to change lives, including your own, go to respite.mt.gov.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we've been speaking with Eric Parsons, who's the Outreach and Education Coordinator for the Friendship Center, and we've been talking about healthy relationships and what that means. So now we're going to talk about sort of the downside to that. So Eric, let's talk a little bit about some of the red flags that we may be noticing in a relationship that's maybe not as healthy.
Sure. So when we talk about relationships, especially abusive or unhealthy relationships, again, it's all about power and control.
Sure.
One person doing things to another person to maintain power over that victim. And that can look a lot of different ways. It can certainly look physical in nature or sexual in nature, but primarily the concerns that we talk often with folks about are different types of emotional or psychological abuse, which is any type of put down, name calling, shaming or blaming or humiliating, any way that an offender will make their victim to feel small or less deserving of love or care. And we also talk often, especially with seniors, about financial abuse.
Sure.
And financial abuse is really any behavior exhibited by the offender that limits the victim's access to resources. So that could be access to a bank account, access to any type of income or funds that they have to pay for their lifestyle. It could be the offender denying access to transportation. Sure. Or to getting medication that an older person might be dependent on. It could be limiting their access to doctor's appointments or to outside care of any kind. These are all things to keep an eye out for if somebody in your life is maybe experiencing an abusive relationship, or maybe if you yourself have find yourself in that position.
And one of the things that I've noticed is that, sometimes it doesn't happen all at once. All of these behaviors don't start one day. How do people really start to notice those, or what should people take note of as these behaviors build?
That's a very good point, is that these relationships do build over time often. For younger folks, when we talk about dating violence, it does seem to start kind of fast and furious with love and affection and care. And then that turns into abuse over time. With older folks, if we're talking about a situation where there's a family member or a longtime caregiver or a longtime spouse involved, these might be more subtle things that haven't always been present. What I would encourage someone to keep in mind is that if something isn't feeling good, that's worth taking note of and exploring. And it can be something very subtle, something very simple, or it could be something that feels really scary. Either way, noticing the fact that that doesn't feel good or that that's upsetting, and then starting to think about what your resources are or who your support folks might be, that's really important.
Wonderful. Eric, I know we talked about stalking earlier, but I would like for you just to kind of cover what that means. I think a lot of our older viewers may have never talked about stalking before, certainly not in school. So what is stalking and what does it look like?
Really good question. Stalking is defined as a pattern of behavior that's directed towards a specific person to cause that person to feel fear.
Okay.
And by a pattern, we mean at least 2 or more incidents. And really that is dependent on the person who's being stalked. It's anything that causes that person to feel fear. So it looks different for everyone. We all understand stalking as to being some sort of unwanted attention, whether that's following, watching, spying, taking pictures, things like that. In 2024, we talk a lot about online stalking and harassment, ways that people track one another using technology.
Sure.
But really the key thing to understand is that if there's somebody who's doing things to you that makes you feel afraid, that's really what it's about. Whether we call it stalking or some other type of abuse doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's scary and we can provide some help.
And so each of those instances doesn't have to be in themselves something that's illegal, right? It's a pattern of behavior,
yes,
correct?
Absolutely. I talk often with young folks about how it can look like romantic gestures or leaving gifts.
Sure.
And those things can look very sweet or romantic and absolutely are not illegal. But really it's not about the gift or the gesture, it's about the person who's doing it and the person who's receiving that. And it's about the context of the relationship that those two people have.
Sure.
So regardless of what the action is, if one person is afraid for some reason of the other person, there could be stalking going on there or some type of overlapping relationship abuse.
Eric, so we notice this in our relationship, or we notice it in the relationship of a friend or a neighbor. What do we do?
So the first thing I would say is to bring up your concerns with the person who's experiencing this.
Sure.
If that's you, notice those concerns and start to think about how you can safely reach out to someone that you trust or someone that you know will offer support.
Okay.
If it's a friend or a loved one or a neighbor who's going through this, check in with that person and say something like, hey, I've noticed these things going on and I'm concerned for you. Is there anything I can do to help?
Sure.
Because what it really comes down to is offering the person the opportunity to get the help. We can't force anyone to receive help, so we need to give them the power to seek help. If someone does say something like, yes, I'm scared, or I'm not sure, or I don't know how to feel about this, you can certainly offer them the opportunity to talk about it further, to put them in touch with resources. You can plan with them on what they need to be safe, and you can always call the Friendship Center.
I think one of the things that we see, you know, there's even a name for it, the bystander effect, is people are nervous or uncomfortable about stepping in. We don't want to make this situation worse.
Right.
What's a safe way to have that conversation? What are some of the things that you can do to make sure that you're doing that in the safest way possible for the person experiencing the situation?
That's a really good point, and that's exactly why we give the power to the person experiencing this to make the decision about what happens. The person who's experiencing some type of abuse knows their life better than we ever can.
Sure.
So they will know what's safe and what's not safe for them. So if we find a situation where we can have a private conversation with them and express concern, they then know that we are a safe person to talk to about it and can offer help. And if we give them the opportunity to decide what happens with that, then we're not causing any harm. We're just truly offering support because we care about them.
Wonderful. And so important to know that maybe that first conversation isn't the one that changes their situation. Maybe it's 3 or 4 conversations down the road.
Absolutely. For a lot of folks who have experienced some type of relationship abuse, it takes multiple tries to get out of an unsafe situation.
Wonderful.
So just continuously offering that support, checking in with that person, offering to help them in whatever way works best for them, and giving them the power to decide what happens. Just continuous support is really the key to success.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for staying tuned to Aging Horizons, and we just really appreciate you and all your great work.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.